Hey, everybody.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Tom.
Thank you. Welcome to Thursday night Resurrection Recovery. My name's Tom Langhofer. I serve as pastor of recovery ministries here at the church. I'm also a recovering alcoholic. And so glad you're here. You know, we have some leftover pizza tonight. We never know. We're still working out, who's going to show up, who's not, what groups are, what aren't. So I think it's safe to say if you want seconds, go back and have some more pizza, okay? If you're new, we meet every Thursday night starting at 5:30 for fellowship and a meal. It's a time to come together as a group of people in recovery, just to, hang out. I mean, there's no program, there's no agenda. It's just a chance to come together as a group of people that have been down that road of struggles of addiction, or have, had to walk alongside their loved ones, your loved ones, as you've watched us crumble, and self-destruct. Whatever the case may be, we're glad you're here. And what we hope to provide through this program is hope. Hope that you can get through this day and then get into tomorrow and take care of tomorrow and just do this thing called living clean and sober one day at a time. So we start with this fellowship and meal, and then we have a testimony at 6:15 every Thursday night. And, a lot of pastors like to preach, and I think it's great to hear that, but to me, to hear somebody's walk, their own story of how they've gotten through what they've gotten through is, for me as a person in recovery, I'd much rather hear that any day of the week. So every Thursday night, you're going to have somebody up here sharing their story. And my hope is that you get something out of that to help you stay clean and sober yet another day. And then at 7 o'clock, we break into our groups. We have 19 groups that meet here on Thursday night. And our new handouts are being printed. We're kind of trying to get caught back up on how we used to be pre-COVID. So we've got our new handouts, so we'll be able to hand out all our support groups that meet on Thursday night. Let's see. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't want to forget. We are not meeting in person next week because of the church-wide rummage sale that goes on here that fills up this entire building. So there will be no recovery meetings in person next week. We will still have ours on Zoom, kind of like how we did during COVID. So I think most of the groups are going to meet. It's just going to have to be on Zoom next week. Then we'll come back in 2 weeks. So next Thursday, we will not be here in person. Okay, Jen, did you hear that? Okay, what'd I say?
We are not meeting next Thursday night for the rummage sale, but the women's 12-step Zoom meeting will be happening.
Amen. That's about it. I'm going to get right to it and introduce my dear friend Kenny Howell, who I've known, I don't know, how many years now, Kenny? 5 years?
Close to 5.
Close to 5 years. And I know him pretty well, and I love him. And he's been through some stuff, but he's kept his program solid, and I just love you a lot, man. And thanks for getting up here and being vulnerable and letting your guard down. And, without any more delay, I'm going to turn it over to Kenny.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Well, I'm Kenny, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been telling some people before this started tonight that I'm sneaking up on 5 years. This is my 4th time of doing this, getting up here and sharing my testimony. But this is the first time that it's going to be real and authentic, and you'll find out why a little bit later. I'm going to try not to dwell too much on my past, but I do like to share a little bit of it so you guys, realize that maybe I got 5 years, but I'm just like you guys. For me, it all started, the first time I got high, I was 12 years old. The first time I smoked pot, I actually got caught. That should have been an eye-opener there, but it wasn't. About 3 months later, after that, I went to St. Teresa's Catholic grade school. My mom was a teacher at the school. My dad was a deacon. And I got caught buying pot, and I got kicked out. And, you know, that's 12 years old, 13 years old. That was a big scandal, and really humiliated my parents. But, you know, I remember the first time I felt the effects of getting high, and I immediately liked the way it made me feel. And, you know, this time in recovery, I've often thought back to that time, and it really wasn't so much how it made me feel, but it was the fact that for the first time in my life, I didn't feel. You know, the family I grew up in, we weren't a close family. There was zero affection, and, you know, so that's something I always looked for. And, but the feeling of not feeling was amazing. So from there, the pot turned into alcohol. From the time I was 16 to 21, I had 4 DWIs. You know, luckily back then you could get them reduced to CNIs, so I really never had to pay any consequences for those. The alcohol rolled over into cocaine, which rolled over into pain pills, which cost me my first marriage. You know, I did some crazy things to feed my addiction. I would fake toothaches, and I'd go to the dentist, and for fear of so I wouldn't be found out, I probably had 6 or 7 healthy teeth pulled just so I could keep continuing that lie. I remember taking a baseball bat to my knee one time so I could actually have something physical that the doctors could see so I could get pain pills. That's how sick that was. You know, but like I said, all of that eventually cost me my first marriage. I ended up going to prison for prescription fraud. I did about 1.5 years for that. I got out, started using again, and for some reason, at the age of 46, I picked up a meth pipe. And that's when, like, things weren't bad enough before, you know, losing my wife, my house, my 3-car garage, 3-bedroom house, 2-car, you know, the American dream, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, you know, the whole 9 yards, man. I gave it all away. And for some reason, I don't know why, I picked up a meth pipe, and I loved the way it made me feel. And, you know, I was kind of sharing part of this last night, but I remember being in a room with a bunch of people one of the first times I was doing meth, and none of them had a job. And I sat there and I looked around that room and I thought, man, I will never be like these people. 2 months later, I had 2 possession charges, a forgery charge because I stole a check from one of my ex-father-in-laws who so graciously offered me employment and gave me a place to live down in Butler, Missouri. And I stole a check from him and forged it. That eventually landed me on probation down in Bates County. Anyway, long story short, man, I bounced in and out of prison. They put me on a 5-year probation. Of course, I couldn't do that. They sent me to prison a couple times. I was in county jail quite a bit. But going back to the meth, man, I mean, you guys have been through it, man. I mean, I grew up in Kansas City. I ended up homeless. I was homeless in Kansas City. The town I grew up in, nobody would take me in, and I understand it. But the shame and guilt that went along with that is what killed me, was because knowing what, you know, initially what I had done to my daughters by not being in their lives from the divorce. The shame and guilt was, I did not know how to handle it. And So I just stayed high. I didn't care about anybody, including myself. I turned into somebody I never thought I would be. You know, and when you always, for me anyway, I would sit there and say, well, I'll never do that. And then when you do it, even though you don't really have, for me anyway, I didn't have a sense of identity about who I was because I spent 40 years in addiction. So I never did take the time to find out who I was. But when you turn into somebody that you don't know or that you thought you'd never be, even though we all have these layers like an onion, even though I didn't know what mine were, every time I did something that I said I'd never do, a piece of that would come off of me. And I just, man, it was horrible. It was horrible. Just all of it, man. The homelessness, the stealing, the robbing. You know, stealing from people I cared about. You know, the main thing, you know, was trust, you know. And so I didn't know what to do. I just, you know, I get a little angry sometimes when people see people like me that are still in their addiction and are like, well, why can't they do anything about it? Why can't they get any help? Well, for me, it wasn't one day at a time. It was 1 hour at a time. You know, I'm walking around with felony warrants. I owe people money. I'm homeless. Am I going to get beat up? Am I going to be able to eat? Am I going to prison? Where am I going to sleep? So my entire time was focused on first getting high and then figuring all those other things out after that, which, you know, once you were high, those things didn't really matter. But so it was, you know, I did a lot of horrible things and I put myself in a lot of dangerous positions. You know, comparatively speaking, I did not do meth that long. It was only 5 years. But in that 5 years, and I'm not trying to glorify it, this is how stupid it got. I got stabbed twice. I was shot at once. I had a gun held under my chin one time. And the scariest thing was I went to Iowa with a guy to sell some meth, and they hadn't seen him in a while, so they thought he was working for the cops. And we went to this bar after closing time, and me and this guy ended up zip-tied naked to chairs in the basement for 5 hours. And I thought, this is where I'm going to die, because nobody knew where we were at. Nobody in Kansas City knew where we were at, and somehow we got out of that. But it did not stop what I was doing. So now on to the good part. In January 2016, I got sent down. I was probably on like years 7 of a 5-year probation. They gave me another chance. They sent me to St. Joe to do a 120 shock time. I got up there and I was in diagnostics, and I knew in my brain that I was either going to die or end up in prison for a long time. So I wanted something to change. I needed something to change. So I'll never forget this guy. We kind of had some mutual friends or whatever out on the street, and I was telling him, his name was Will Carver, and I'll never forget his name just because of that. And I said, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have nothing left. I have lost everything. I don't have a home to go to. I don't have my kids, my brothers. I had nothing. And I said, I hope I get it this time. And he looked me square in the eyes, and as peaceful as he could, he said, man, you have something. I said, what are you talking about? I just told you I have nothing. He said, you have hope. And that's where it all started for me. So I started reading a couple books while I was in diagnostics. One of them that really helped me begin to forgive myself was a book by Joyce Meyer called, I think it was Just Tell Them I Love Them. And it was pretty much just telling me that no matter what we do, God is always going to love us. He's already forgiven us. That was the turning point for me. I started going to Bible study. I started going to church once I got out of diagnostics. And I could feel myself changing in that way. So I get out the first weekend of June. I go to this place in Bethany, Missouri. It's kind of a transitional living place. I go up there, and I don't know what it was. Right now, I look back, and I think it was Satan messing with me because I was scared to death of this place. So I left. So I'm out of prison 2 weeks, and I've already got a felony absconding warrant. I come back to Kansas City, and I feel like I have to save this girl who I got started doing meth, and I get right back in the mix of it, way over my head, with this girl who ended up getting a 25-year kingpin charge. I was scared to death, but I had found God enough, I'd let him into my life enough, let me put it that way, to where for those 2.5 months, I was so scared, I prayed every day, God, get me out of this. I don't care if I go to prison. I knew if I went back, I was probably gonna go back for at least 5 years, and I didn't care. I knew I'd be alive. I remember praying, just let me get back to prison so I can read my Bible. That's all I wanted, man. I would start crying, and my girlfriend was like, what's wrong? And she just didn't understand. So anyway, on August 20th of 2016, like I said, this girl was just out there doing way too much for me to even comprehend. But there was a guy running around the house who had a felony absconding warrant. And I call them my 5 angels dressed up as U.S. Marshals, kicked the door in, and pulled me out of that house. I didn't go willingly. They had to come and get me, don't get me wrong. But once I was out, I remember, I had my felony absconding warrant, so I get back in the back of the paddy wagon, and I could just feel everything wash off of me. I was asleep by the time we got down to the end of the street. I remember going back to Bates County, and those guys that were in Bates County the last time I was there was still there, and they're like, man, you've changed. Something's different. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. And so anyway, Bates County sends me back to St. Joe to do another 120. So I'm sitting up there waiting to go to the Hill, blah, blah, blah. And I get called into my caseworker, and they're like, well, you have to go back to county because they can't give you 2 120s on the same charge. So I'm like, okay, great. So now I know I'm going to prison, right? So I go back to Bates County, and I'm hanging out down there, and I'm praying, and here's where God stepped in, and again. So we go to court, and they take you over in van loads. I'm in the first van load. My name never gets called. They bring another van load over, and they're going through all those people, and my probation officer or my public defender comes up and says, hey, you're probably going to get your time. You suck at probation. I said, well, that's fine. I get it. Let's just do it. And but she goes, I'm going to ask for a continuance. And as she got up to walk away, I was thinking to myself, no, I mean, if anybody's been to prison, you just want to go. You just want to go. Let's get it over with. So as she's walking away after she tells me she's going to ask for a continuance, I'm thinking, no, let's just do this. And I heard this voice in my head say, just sit down, don't say anything. So I sat there. They go through a few more people. The jail was so crowded, there's this older guy that gets up there in front of me. He had just gotten there. He's got pneumonia, and they got him sleeping on the floor, right? So the judge is like, well, let's see if we can make some room for you. So they call me up there. And, the public defender is explaining, we sentenced him to a 120. We can't do that. He's pretty much already got all his time in. And the judge looks at me and he goes, you know what? He goes, I'm going to give you another chance because that man needs to get up off the floor. So, I mean, I can see God working in all of that. Just the fact that they didn't call my name, that I did not stop my public defender and tell her, let's just do this, to where this man, I see it all. So I go to court thinking I'm going to prison. 45 minutes later, I'm out on the streets. I'm a free man back on probation. I come to the Healing House. So when I got to the Healing House, I knew, like I said, I knew I did not want to do drugs anymore. The lady I worked for, she stuck with me through my entire addiction. And her office is located in Northeast, which is where the Healing House is. She hired me back, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I do remember when I got to the Healing House, it was the first time in, at least 20 years to where I could sit down and breathe and not have to worry about anything, especially the last 5 years of where I was going to eat, where I was going to sleep, was somebody going to smash my face in again because I owed him money. I did not have to worry about that. All I had to do was stay clean. So I was down at the Healing House, and here comes a little bit of bad part, but it's going to get good. When you guys go down there, you guys know you're required to get a sponsor, read the first 164, get a job, blah, blah, blah. I did not get a sponsor. I lied. Everybody thought I was doing the deal. Okay, and now here comes the part where the character defects that I wasn't aware of are coming back into play because I'm a fraud again. And these people look up to me. They think I'm doing this. So boom, there goes another layer of Kenny. So I'm scared everybody's going to find out. I had people, they made me a house leader. I had people coming up to me asking me to be their sponsor. And I'd have to say, sorry, can't. I'm not ready to do that yet. And freaking lying to them because I wasn't doing it. So I move out of the Healing House, and here's where God stepped in mightily. He put someone in my life, and we had been dating a couple months, and God woke me up in the middle of the night, man, and I could feel the Holy Spirit in my room for like 2 hours. And basically, what he was telling me is like, man, I am giving you a gift. I'm giving you this woman. All I ask is that you love her, show her my love. And he told me, if you do that for me, I picked her for you so you could get closer to me. And I didn't realize how that was going to play out at the time. So I get married, and a lot of you know Tina. She saw right through me once we started getting in the relationship. She knew I hadn't worked the steps. And some of my old insecurities came up. And I lied to her about some things that I did not need to lie to her about. And with Tina, there's no right and wrong. There's no black area, it's right or wrong, and I respect that. So she moved out, and I almost went and got high. I tried to, but the person I was looking for had left the casino already. That's a God thing. So that scared me enough to where what I did, and this is where God's opening up these doors, probably knowing that I'm going to screw up, right? And he's already opening up these doors. I had volunteered to be a greeter at Res Downtown. Excuse me. So after Tina moved out, I'm freaking out. I'm by myself. I hate it. I'm scared to death. I go down to church. They needed somebody to be a greeter on Saturday night. I was scheduled to be a greeter on Sunday. So I'm like, boom, I got to get out of the house. I go down there. There's Pastor Ann. I kind of tell her what's going on. I said, man, I've just got some stuff, some personal stuff that I grew up with that is causing problems in my marriage. And she tells me about this counseling referral program that they have. They hook me up with a counselor. I go down there and start working through this stuff with this counselor. But I got so scared when I almost got high that I did two things. I ran as quickly as I could to my church and to God. And this is another, the people God puts in your life, you may not realize it at the time, what they're going to do for you. But, I learned a lot about faith and recovery from Tina. But one of the best things, that God did for me through her was when I wanted to find, I'd gotten an outside sponsor up at the North Oak Group, and he was a bigger mess than I was. And I faked my way through the steps with him. I did not get honest with him. I was working the steps, and I'll be honest with you right now, it was probably more for my marriage than it was for me. So when I got scared because I almost went out and used again, I was talking to Tina. I said, man, I want to find a good faith-based sponsor. And she goes, why don't you ask Daryl or Luther? And that is God working through Tina to get to me and living up to his promise that I'm giving you this woman and you are going to find me. So you guys know Daryl. The man, he saved my life, God through God. So here's the real good part. I started working the steps, honestly, and I did them thoroughly the way they're supposed to be done. I surrendered my life to God, and I have a life today that, I say this over and over again, man, I never knew existed. I could never dream of it because I never knew a life like this was possible. So how in the heck can I dream about something I don't even know about? I have peace and joy. I see God working every day in my life, every day. And one of the biggest things that helped me was I read a book called Seek Him First. And it was so much, it's good to pray for things, but, every once in a while ask God what you can do for him. And when I started doing that, doors opened up to things I never even prayed about, never even asked for. This has gone full circle to where Daryl will give all the credit to God, but because of Daryl Liebman and God, I know what it's like to be a good husband, a good father, a person in recovery, a man of God, and just a good human being. And it's amazing. And so for anybody out there who may have done what I did or is doing what I did, find God as quickly as you can and surrender. This is a God thing, man. My kids are back in my life, but I wasn't in their life for 15 years. My daughter sent me a message the other day. She's going through some things. Her grandfather just passed away today, but I was able to be there for her, and this one floored me. She sent me a text message, said, thanks for coming down to the hospital. Thank you for the prayers. And who would have ever thought that you would turn out to be a person I would look up to? And that was one of the biggest confirmations from God that this works. I think, it's like a big, and I say this, I use some weird analogies, it's like a big faith-based legal pyramid scheme. It really is. And it's God up here, and then it's Jesus, and then it's God touching Luther, got Luther clean. Daryl saw that Luther was clean, so Daryl went to Luther to get help, who got clean. Now Daryl's helping all of us. Tom is clean. He's helping. Just picture it. It's all over. It's just huge, and it's amazing, and it's wonderful. And so there's three things I trust. I trust the Bible, which is God. I trust the big book of AA, and I trust Daryl Liebman. Other than that, I don't even really trust myself, to be honest with you. I can't. But, I'll sit up here and I'll tell you one thing. I can't promise anybody anything, only one thing. If you surrender your life to God and truly work these steps the way you're supposed to, you're going to have a life. I promise you, you're going to have a life that you never knew existed. I spent 40 years in addiction. I am so happy that I can get up here and I don't have to lie my way through another testimony. I actually have something to share, and I hope it's helped. With that, I'll pass.
God and the pyramid scheme. I love it. I love it. Thanks, Kenny, for your testimony. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and we will see you back in 2 weeks. And have a great rest of the evening. Thanks for being here.